This is Charlie Rose.
Sean Penn is here. The actor, director, humanitarian, and two-time Academy Award winner is in New York, having just returned from Haiti. He rushed to that country just days after a devastating earthquake in January killed nearly 300,000 people and left 1.5 million homeless. He formed an NGO called JP Haiti Relief Organization. So far, it's built a school, a women's clinic, and a trauma center for children. Today, Sean Penn is running one of Haiti's largest and most efficient camps.
JPHRO's work began just hours after the earthquake hit on January 12th. Founder Sean Penn immediately reached out to a large network of emergency management and government contacts, and they quickly mobilized to take action in Haiti. Less than a week after the disaster, JPHRO was on the ground. They brought in much-needed medical supplies and a team of doctors who went to work right away treating patients. At the same time, other JPHRO team members delivered food and medical supplies to numerous camps and orphanages in need.
But 6 months after the disaster, the recovery effort has slowed. Some say it may have stalled. Sean Penn says he can't leave his adopted country before there is more life than death. I am very pleased to have him back at this table. Welcome.
Thank you.
Tell me, in your own words, what you see and what you know about where this is 6 months after the earthquake struck.
I think the best place to begin is in the practical sense. The earthquake was a devastating size on a devastated country in the first place. So you have both a government, which was already fractured and then increasingly fractured. I mean, one of the things that I call on in describing this is that at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, with government offices that close at 4, those that were in those buildings were among the most committed. Most were lost. Right. Leaving behind, though, some very strong leaders, but without the administrative capacity, without the manpower to actually, have a functional government. The international aid organizations come in. Everyone is scrambling to find their place. The only legitimate leadership in this circumstance initially is the government of Haiti, which is fractured in that way. There was, I felt, quite a void of leadership, central leadership in the UN agencies at that point. The NGOs, which had an enormous history in Haiti, by and large, are in the job security business. In other words, NGOs want to stay in the NGO business, which is antithetical to what the effort should be, which is to create ultimately a sustainable, independent place and a recovered place. So what then happens, the United States military, as well as some other militaries, Canadians and Venezuelans, others, came in. And those jobs were strictly life-saving. And so with that very clear mandate, there was a lot of momentum at that point. But the parallel thinking of reconstruction comes in very quickly. And with that comes in profiteering and all of the things that have always made it complicated and all over the world, and in particular, I think, in Haiti. So then you had various agendas and various definitions of what was sustainable, what was the creation of dependence versus independence. And so you had basically a city full of meetings and theory and talk and very little action. Once the United States military in particular was recalled with deployments in Afghanistan and other places, there was a very static period. NGOs might complain that without city planning, there was no legitimate way to put temporary shelters that were hurricane resistant into areas that, for example, the government's CNE had cleared the rubble from. Proof of ownership became, I felt, very much more an excuse than an issue, but an excuse not to take action in some of these areas. And still today, 6 months later, with the exception of main thoroughways, many of the streets are triple head high in 300 to 500 meters long rubble, where homes that maybe were not damaged in the earthquake are still unlivable. So people are living in spontaneous camps. There's 1.8 million displaced, and to date, the only relocations that have happened into at least planned or safer camps than the ones that they were in, meaning emergency relief camps, if not ultimately model communities. A total of 7,000 people have been relocated in 6 months.
So what needs to be done from this day forward?
It starts with donors. I would recommend, in terms of for anyone who has an interest in helping the Haitian people who deserve their help, and much more of it than all the generous donations to date so far, that they could read Timothy Schwartz's book, Travesty in Haiti, which describes the dilemma. And through that, if they can read that, understand the dynamics of international aid work, the way it gets politicized, the way that religious organizations blindly support orphanages full of children who have families and are, in many cases, what would be the equivalent of the middle-class families of Haiti. And to cut through all of that, there are organizations, there are actions that are where you don't do harm by doing good. Food is a major area where we have done more harm than good. And you can track this where C-130s full of rice bags come in. And I don't mean in the case of immediate disaster relief. But as it goes on, there's still not a voucher system which would actually give people who need the leg up after the earthquake the opportunity to get some kind of an assistance. The trade-off would be with both the grassroots vendors and the storefront vendors, so that the money would actually be there. But what happens is that because, for example, USAID, again an organization that has a lot of goodwill in it, it also moves with the political agendas of the United States government. And so projects or assignments, or those that are applied for by NGOs, become limited to those things which go straight along with the U.S. agenda. So these are the kinds of things that have to be thought out very, very clearly. One of the kind of no-brainers and things where, I would encourage people to put money is in rubble clearing.
So this is Rue Jean-Baptiste, and this was one of the main streets running through Delmas 32, which is the area that we're working on clearing now.
This corner was just like a park. People stay here like late at night. Okay, they're like having fun here. There was a TV here, there was water here, but most of the people in the area used to hang out here.
So this was like the town square.
Exactly.
Time after time when I ask people about Haiti, that's what they say. You need to get rid of the rubble.
Yeah, you'll do no harm by clearing the streets to let the Haitian people make their own country.
Could they have cleared it much better? And if they didn't, why not? And going forward, how do you get it done?
Yeah, I think, there's been a lot of tug-of-wars between the government of Haiti and the international aid organizations.
Including the United Nations.
Including the United Nations. I think that, one of the things is the level of historic mistrust. We never stop hearing about corruption as an issue. And I think it's given the NGOs quite a big excuse not to go forward. The Préval government was, by any conventional measure, moving forward in a progressive agenda when the earthquake happened.
Bill Clinton and others who've had long experience there have said that very fact.
Yeah.
That the government, at the time the earthquake struck, this government was getting better.
There's no question. This is the country with the worst luck in history. But meanwhile, when they speak of corruption today, my question is, with what? The Haitian government, President Préval has
no
control.
means to corrupt. Is that what you're saying?
You can't corrupt through deficit financing, and that's all the financing he can do right now. They don't have control of the money. It's the World Bank. It's the Clinton Foundation. They have the first say over the reconstruction money. But in the government of Haiti, moving into the reconstruction phase, which is almost a morale mandate that makes sense in context of Haiti. But those of us in relief work know that there is still an emergency phase on, and that emergency phase is the most difficult one to sell to people, which is preventative, and it's preventative in terms of disease, mudslide, flooding, and also social unrest. And it's in that area that things like rubble removal, pilot sites where people are getting out of the camps and into pockets of neighborhoods so that the people can see that someone is doing something. And so that you can give some notion of the presence and the efforts of central government.
This is a piece about you in the Vanity Fair magazine, written by Doug Brinkley, who's a well-known historian who lives in New Orleans and teaches in New Orleans. To read that, you get a sense that you have access to the levers of power in the U.S. government. You testified before Congress. The military there has been almost partners with you in terms of what you're trying to do. You know people in the State Department at the Deputy Assistant Secretary of State level, and certainly more if you needed it. Are they responsive to you? Do you get a hearing? Are they listening?
They've been directly responsive. I have had, and we wouldn't be able to bring the things that we've brought without their help, and certainly initially even getting in happened through the State Department and Congressman Kucinich.
Within 48 hours or so.
Yeah, and their follow through. I can get them on the phone. I can get, the attention has been on, because the issues have been, mutually important. The U.S. military mission in Haiti was, I can say this today, and I will say it till I fall down dead, has been a strictly humanitarian mission. And their logistical capacity, their predisposition towards service, even though, it is understood, and it's why people think it's ironic I would have such a relationship with the military, but my criticism has rarely, if ever, been toward the troops themselves, but the abuse of those who give them their orders.
Or policy.
Policy. But to see them exercise their skill sets and their will to serve under circumstances like this was, an awesome thing and a great learning curve, and it set the standard for the way that our organization
Learning curve for
works.
them, or for you, or for both?
For you. Us. Yeah. But there was also a kind of, because this was not a conventional conflict zone where NGOs and the military tend to have very different agendas. In this case, everybody wanted to help these people under these circumstances. And the military were the best at it. And so we were able to partner because we had doctors we could complement their services with, and they had horsepower they could complement our services with. And out of that, and initially with Lieutenant Colonel Mike Foster, and then leading on to my relationship with Lieutenant General Keane.
Right.
We are trying to continue that relationship, not only in terms of JPHRO, but to try to find a way in which the United States and NGOs in circumstances of disaster could have an institutionalized collaboration.
So this is an experience, a learning experience for people who in the future will be called on to do things like this. They are learning how to do it.
Right.
And it's a new role for the military beyond security.
Correct, yeah. But, at the same time, it is a war. The way that I look at it, the reason I wish the military, and I think it would be totally legitimate for the United States military, given the President Preval's administration allowing it, I think they would, to still be in Haiti. There's a small engineering group still there.
So at the largest time, at the time of the most number of military, how many were there?
Well, I think it was 22,000 troops.
And today?
500.
500.
National Guard, yeah.
National Guard.
Mm-hmm. And they're in one of the worst flood zone areas in preparation for bad weather and hurricanes in Gonaïves.
Which comes up when, in the summer?
It's now. It can happen anytime. Yeah, we're getting heavy rains right now.
And so the reason they withdrew the military was because they had to redeploy them for other needs, or because they thought this was a temporary mission which had been completed?
The first responders, for example, the 82nd Airborne, right. They all had hard deployments, in particular in Afghanistan.
Right.
So, again, when I say this country just an hour and a half off our shores, yes, there's a war in Afghanistan. Arguably, a misconceived approach being done there, and American soldiers dying. Here, just an hour and a half away, is a war without a face to hate. So you have a surge coming with the weather. You have a surge coming with the kind of historic pressures that build up when an election comes. And you've got people in a devastated infrastructure on the streets in spontaneous camps that are predisposed to outbreaks of disease, and these surges are on the way. Well, that's a war. That's a reason for the United States military to be there to fight that war.
So you've asked them, and you asked those people that you know and have contact with, send more military, send the military back?
Yes, I've asked. And I can tell you that the soldiers that I was side by side with there in Haiti, by and large, would love to have that mission. And they handled it with so much humanity and grace and courage. And, you know, it really... But to be realistic, and I don't think that we're going to have a big redeployment of troops until there's an emergency, they have already done what they've done. And if we, and if the private sector, though it is, you know, kind of a ludicrous idea that the private sector is going to be taking this on by itself. When you have
Why is that a ludicrous idea?
I don't think it can happen that way. For one thing, it doesn't have... You have the problem of NGOs. NGOs live in, you know, if we went to Haiti today, you would see a devastated, in Port-au-Prince, devastated city. But I could find great and intact houses with chefs and swimming pools, and in every one of them lives an NGO. And that's where they're living. And you're living in a camp in a tent. Yeah, which is not to simply say because you're living comfortably and you have time to organize your office space, because some of them are very effective. But it is to say that there's an entrenched culture, and it feeds itself in supporting its donorship's eye and its grantors, the grantor being in particular USAID, lack of presence, because for one thing, both in the NGOs and I have some very helpful contacts in USAID, and I think that Dr. Shaw is a formidable guy who, again, this is a very new job and emergency there. I'm very optimistic about what USAID will do, but to date, one of the problems is rotations. Just as NGOs are developing relationships with the on-site people from USAID, just as they're developing relationships with each other, both the NGOs and USAID rotates those people out. Now you got a new guy. So it's more of a...
So what's the answer to that issue?
Well, the answer to it, people sort of ask me, how did you get yourself into this? Well,
right. I'm coming to that, actually.
There's one part of that I'll address now. But the fact that the stakes are different. The culture is very much like the culture of making a movie in Hollywood. You have so many things working against the middle. You've got so much cult of personality. You go to an NGO party, and it might not be that the guy who starred in that movie walks in the room and everyone pays attention, but it may be that a UN cluster lead walks in and they say, there's so-and-so. It's a culture of celebrity. It's a culture of, and now more than ever, and for example, we've talked about this in the movies. They represent scripts more than they make them most often. Let's represent, let's do the cosmetic version of a complete project. So they will do a relocation project. And once it looks handsome, the people are on their own. So there's not a follow-through. And then when it doesn't work, because later something...
It sounds to me like you're saying there's more planning than doing.
There's planning, and there are sets built, but there's no infrastructure to those sets.
So therefore, what's needed is not reaching the people who need it.
No, and that's been the history. Now I do want to come back. I think that this is a very crucial period. And this is
the next 6 months, the next 3 months, the
next month is going to trigger things. So one of the things that may make or break the situation is that it turns out that when you have a central government, broken though it is, but with some very good leaders involved, you've got the world community of charity, you've got the UN. The missing link is the press, because that's the oversight.
They're not there?
No.
They left after the first?
They left after the first. They came back 6 months later and said, what happened? No,
We're doing a 6-month review.
We're doing a 6-month review. And my answer was, you shouldn't, the problem here is that you're asking me what happened. You should have been here every step to see what happened. And if I made a mistake, you should have reported it. If they are corrupt over here, you should have proven it and reported it. They should have been there. Had that happened, far less people would have died and will die as it's coming up. They are a fundamental part of this problem.
How big is what you do now? You run a camp. You run an NGO. You do what there?
All right. We've got 55,000 IDPs in camp.
What's an IDP?
We don't call them refugee. The term for refugee crosses their borders into another country. Right. So we, as camp managers, we work for the International Office of Migration, in essence, or under their umbrella, and with a grant from them. So what we do is we provide, we coordinate the NGO actors in the camp. Ironically, they're called actors. You know, whoever's acting in camp as an NGO. Right. So the coordination, we have about 15 primary NGOs that work as partners with us there. Some major, some homegrown and smaller, some well-financed, some not. So we coordinate those and we look for projects. We look for things to make life safer and better every day for those people while they're in that circumstance, but not to the point that you draw it into being the feeling of a permanent community, which will never be established as a safe one.
So it's medical, it's food, it's shelter.
Yeah, well, it depends. We have, my organization also has a Class 3 hospital on site, and we have a medical NGO, and we have several medical NGOs that we work with. IMC, International Medical Corps, MSF, several that are in camp, as well as we have Oxfam, involved CRS, all playing different functions. The medicals coordinate very closely so as not to overlap, and that's part of our job. So that's that job. But then, for example, food. You had all these C-130s full of food coming in, the emergency aid relief. Almost everything that you distribute in Haiti under these circumstances can be looked at as a cash transfer. People who are used to $1 to $2 a day pre-quake, that was the average salary for people in Haiti. And I don't want to miss getting into education, because that's a key thing. These people were spending 45% of that a year on their children's education with substandard teaching in schools and materials. So that's something that is part of both disaster and rebuilding efforts, or they won't work. So that's one of the jobs at JPHR, is managing that camp. And we won't do a food intervention now because there are cash for work programs. What we do is that we have another NGO, Save the Children, that has done some supplemental with pregnant mothers, nursing mothers, children. And we constantly check any kinds of issues with kids, because what you have to, where you would violate any policy that doesn't want to be abused, is when children of a certain age, where without the proper nutrition, not just enough to eat, but the right things to eat, will actually have a permanent issue of brain function. So you're trying to constantly create as much of an equitable investment on your part of this big puzzle, and at the same time you have to step in when there's emergencies. Separate from that, we've started a rubble removal wing, and this is the thing I'm most excited about. You can just get out in the streets, you pick a pilot neighborhood. They've broken them down into the homes that were not damaged in this earthquake.
This is the government?
The Ministry of Public Works and Transportation, working with UN Ops, went in and did inspections, 2,000 structures a day, and in as many cases as possible identifying who the owners were. But in the area representing the IDPs in our camp, they're mostly renters and from multi-level homes that are destroyed. So to get them back into T-shelters in that area, for example, you go to a landowner and say, we will clear the rubble off your property, but you will allow us to put 4 T-shelters here for 4 families. There were probably 8 to 15 families living in what was once that building, so it's not going to make room for everybody. And then you bring the resources, as we have in the camps, like the water bladders, things like that, and try to move it from a kind of camp management into a community management that increasingly becomes their own, and where whatever Cash for Work money is supported by USAID and others, can go into building an infrastructure that's going to be in a place that's going to last. Build it, bring the clinics there, out of the camps, into the community. The camp people that are still there can walk there rather than, we have about 50% of our patients that are coming in from outside the camp and about 50 from within. So now we just transfer who walks to it and try to get it so that they're leaving the camps, going to the neighborhoods, but only as the neighborhoods can be supported and the schools can be rebuilt.
But back to the government and what you want. Is it you're asking you'd like for the military to come back, you'd like more money, more resources, more what?
USAID can't give my organization money, so we rely on funding from other private donors and such.
So all your funding for your NGO has to come from foundations and private money?
Correct.
All right. Are you getting...
That's because you have to be an NGO for a year for the accounting that allows USAID to do the...
Oh, I see. So after another 6 months, you'll be okay.
We can go and discuss things with them at that time.
All right. So you're out looking for funds and to help you. What's the life and death sort of dynamic right now? In other words, 300,000 people died? Mm-hmm. Yes? Mm-hmm. What's the level of death today from either as a consequence of what happened, as a consequence of malnutrition, as a consequence of a whole range of things? Bad health, no drugs, none of the kinds of things that make a difference in providing a sustainable environment.
Right. You know, in the big picture of the things that I can act on and my organization can act on, and what we generally see, answering your question is very hard. We know about breaks out of typhoid over here, of TB here. Right. We know about these things, but there's not a centralized collection of this information. Until we have what we consider a bona fide outbreak in one identified location, I'm not going to be able to come here and say the bells are ringing. We had some close calls. We took enormously preventative measures. Others, the State Department among them, kicked into high gear on all of that, especially when we had the diphtheria case. And I think a lot of cold chains are being established. But right now, I can tell you that one of the biggest issues is there's no blood. There's no blood there. So the trauma hospitals, for example, University of Miami, Medishare, Dr. Barth Green's outfit down there. They've got the only trauma center, functional trauma center in all of Port-au-Prince. They've got no blood. So they were losing as many as 3 patients a week there, simply because they were sending volunteers down.
That's today. That's today's
right now.
Circumstance.
That's right now. American Red Cross. This has been the most interesting kind of learning curve for me. I talked to the leadership of the American Red Cross. This is one of the problems is you need the big organizations. They're built by people who have a lot of experience, and a lot of them are very passionate people. A lot of them know the problems. But like anything, moving a big organization in an emergency situation is not easy. So we're starting to build different relationships where they can satellite support to those who can move and are on the ground. They've been very, very, increasingly and now, very responsive to my organization. I think, and I've encouraged it before, people should have a better sense of what those donor dollars do with the American Red Cross and so on. But again, there is a kind of model that I've experienced lately with them. And I don't believe, are a registered NGO in Haiti because they worked that out with the Haitian Red Cross, the International Federation of Red Cross. But the mechanics of how all of this stuff works is really the responsibility of donors to understand, and our responsibility to make clearer. So for example, when we have these specific issues, they become a good place to go to. They can start to mobilize some of those things that have not been. But we are this far along right now, and I know that American Red Cross is one of those charging the way in terms of trying to help design something with the Ministry of Health in Haiti to be able to get blood collection, perhaps from the United States.
Let me take you back to the time of the earthquake. You're in Malibu or somewhere out there. You see it on the news. What did you decide? I had to be there? I want to figure out how I can help. Now, you had done that in Katrina, a different place, a different kind of emergency, but you were there on the ground doing things. Where was your head? What did you think you could do? Were you flying blindly? Were you using skills you had learned somewhere else in terms of contacts, finding a plane, finding doctors, finding medical supplies, finding stuff, finding a way to get into Haiti? All of that.
It was all of that. And I guess most strongly out of the experience with Katrina was that I waited 4 days thinking that agencies took care of these things. And when I went down to New Orleans, it was like pulling back the curtain and seeing that when you pull back the curtain on government, there's nothing there in disaster relief. And that doesn't mean
nothing there, meaning they don't know how to do it, meaning something else.
Well, they might know how to do Katrina today, and they might, know how to do Haiti's earthquake tomorrow.
Yeah.
But when these kinds of things,
they may know how to do BP tomorrow.
Yeah, they may know how to do BP tomorrow. And maybe BP should do some promotion for themselves by giving some money to the people in Haiti as well as the people in the Gulf. But what happens is that one of the, in a disaster like this, there has to be a functional deputization. When people get on the ground, you've got to take chances with donors' money. Because otherwise people are going to die, and they did.
You have to make decisions.
You got to be decisive. And that's what I found out in Katrina. So finally, I went down there, and shamefully, I didn't go down the first day because I thought I would be in somebody's way. And we got 40 people out of the water with one little boat. So in this case, I knew how to get, I was hearing about amputations being done with no more than a Motrin.
Without morphine.
Yeah. And so I know somebody who could get me some of these medications and get them to the Venezuelan embassy, and also this was but
you did an interesting thing there too. I mean, you went to the military and said, "Look, I found out that Hugo Chavez, somebody that I know and have had many conversations with, is prepared to give us, was it morphine?
Morphine and ketamine.
And basically, you went to the Army and said, "I just want you to know this."
And they said, "We'll apologize later. Bring it on." This is. President Clinton said the other day in Haiti, this is, this is one thing that Venezuela, the United States, and Cuba agree on, that these people need this medical help now. You bring doctors, you bring medicine, you bring medical equipment and supplies to Haiti, and you spend 2 seconds figuring out where those things are going to be useful. You bring education, working with the Ministry of Education, and in particular in Haiti, the First Lady, and you bring subsidies for these schools that have been charging tuition for some of the poorest people on the planet all this time, and a rising curriculum and training for teachers. That's real. But you got church groups all over this country, very well-intended church groups all over the United States, who are giving money, adopting orphans from, that have parents. Where orphanages are big business in Haiti. Bring us your kids and the rest of it, and all of that was happening. So President Préval has, one of the problems with the Aristide government was that while he had social reforms that actually were going to help the people in cooperatives and so on, the kinds of things we should be doing now, and particularly with environmental technology, I think, there was also such a rising personal power issue, and that gave in to narco-trafficking, if not personally, certainly indirectly, that gave in to violence. And so you didn't have the basic security in the country. You didn't have the trust of a police department. But when you have somebody like President Préval who promotes decentralization of power, a presidential power, while wanting to allot land ownership to people, then we have to watch very carefully our own government's influence in this. Because historically, when you can attach, as we never will attach socialism when we talk about the fire department or the police department, and yet we'll attach it to health care, in the same way, when land has been allotted from idle lands of wealthy, mostly diaspora, or if land is allotted. I would very much like to know how much of that land in Haiti that we keep calling out for lands to be developed for new communities or for temporary communities to get people out of harm's way. I'd very much like to know how much of that land is owned by the Catholic Church in Haiti. And there are organizations that work very closely with the Catholic Church. And none of these things, it's a funny thing in Haiti. Nobody tells you where to look for stuff, whether it's land or medicine. You won't have, if there's one place that houses the things that will save lives in the case of an outbreak of this disease or this disease, no one goes from that place, nobody from any of these major organizations, any of them, from that place that has it to the major hospitals to say,
in
by
other
the
words,
way,
the
if you
people
get
who
a
have
case,
things are not going to the other people who might need them and say, look, we have this. If you need it, here we are.
And so much of it goes to what's on the paperwork. It's on our website. 8 organizations that are doing their job don't have time for a website. You got to come to. There's got to be one person going to the 200 who are working in the field. One person from the air-conditioned office or the rich NGO house have got to go to the people in the field and say to their supervisors, "This is where this is." You don't say to a bunch of supervisors who can't keep their paper dry in the rains, "You guys, well, that was there the whole time. Why didn't you come talk to me? We were smoking a cigarette and having a beer. We would have talked to you about it." Well, why instead didn't you put your cigarette out, put your beer down, get in a truck, and go to General Hospital or Medishare or JPHRO or the government of Haiti and let them know how many tents you've got in a warehouse?
Okay, but now about you. So you get down there and you come in with some stuff, and you've got a plethora of connections you can use to bring and understand and do things that other people weren't doing, to find things. When did you say, I'm here for a long run? When did you say, this is not Sean coming in to do what he can do for the next 3 weeks, and then he's going back? Because at some point you canceled 2 movies you were supposed to make, yes? I don't know whether it's had to do with other issues or this.
Something else, yeah.
Huh?
That had to do with something else.
Something else, okay. But you basically decided that this is where I want to be, have to be, and believe I can make a difference. Yes?
We went in. My thought was 2 weeks, that we'd stay 2 weeks. And then you see gaps. And you see gaps. Forget about the gaps that I might be investing in the culture of complaint on, the things I'm complaining about that are going wrong. In a disaster on this magnitude, there's going to be gaps no matter how competent the organizations involved are. And there were gaps that we had people, and I felt that I had something personal to offer it, where it became, people, friends of mine think I became obsessed. I became obligated. We saw we were making a difference, and it was like walking away from, a car crash and letting the people hang off the side of the window, with their head about to be crushed or the fireball about to kill them. It was too clear that we had to continue.
Now, was there, and some have speculated, including this article, that this came at a time in your life where you'd gone through some bad things that at least psychologically left you in a cold place, and that this somehow gave you meaning to your life?
Well, any commitment that you make completely that's going to be successful cannot depend on an equal amount of commitment on the other side. Haiti announces that very clearly. And so when I come there with the people that I came with, and I know that I'm speaking for my organization at large here, and I think for a lot of other people. I mean, we've really had mentors. I want to make sure I don't walk away from here saying, "Oh, all those bad NGOs." Well, our mentors are in NGOs, people who are really have educated us, and because like I say, you have great people, but the organizations are flawed.
Okay, but you personally?
Yeah, personally. There is something in all of us, I think, that at once is searching for purpose, paying for sins, and recognizing our skill sets. And I think that when those things merge, and they're complemented by the incredible character of people like the Haitian people, and yes, the smiles of the children who I still speak no Creole with because I consider myself a facilitator. I'm a functionary in this situation. I have people who are very huggy-kissy with everybody in my organization. I try to function as a machine in the middle of it. So I notice peripherally just how beautiful the smiles are, but I don't invest tremendously in it. But when all of those things come around and they grab you, and you find yourself surrounded by people who are in for their own reasons, just as committed, just as invested in it, there's something that happens, and it's communal.
What happens?
There's a kind of strength that happens, and it's not, and it goes away from yourself, and it becomes very communal. And then when you get involved with say you do find an NGO that's light thinking, and you meet on the street on a project, and they're controlling the cash for work bank, so you're getting, while you have your heavy equipment in, you might have 800, 1,000 Haitians employed, and maybe that's paid for by USAID.
Was there a part of you that when you got there said, everything that I am that might have manifested itself in another way, here's a place where I can use it. It is my strength of character. It is my, I don't give a damn attitude about things in terms of I want to get it done. I want to go from here to here. Mm-hmm. And these were natural instincts of yours that somehow you were able to use in a different way than you ever had before.
Yeah, but I would relate it to something that I think is very common amongst us all, and something that I've spoken about in my own work and other activities outside of the movie business in the past, is that it kind of is all one thing. I mean, I think the older we get, the more we look back and we say, I'm not someone says to me there's a God, good by me. Somebody says there's not a God, just as good by me. I feel like it's respectful enough of God to say I believe in the mystery.
That's right.
So,
That's right.
But meanwhile, there is some kind of design to all this thing, because there's too many.
Some kind of design to what?
Either our experience in life is one of tremendous coincidence,
right,
or there's a design.
And you believe?
We may have a part in creating it or not, but of course, I knew I was going to be in Haiti now when I look back. I didn't know there was going to be an earthquake, but somehow our lives it's all one thing. I think we kind of get born and we step into a chair and the roller coaster starts, and we don't have an enormous amount to say about where it's going to go. Because this is there's something very, in one hand, a friend of mine described it yesterday saying, that you're having a fringe experience.
A fringe experience.
A fringe experience, in terms of the things that we see and do every day in Haiti, right, versus what, but in fact...
Well, I don't understand what a fringe experience is.
Well, I think I understand it because it's outside the norm.
Okay, right.
When in fact, living in America is the fringe experience, because most of the world lives like that.
So how does it change you? How has seeing all this, being able to do something, being able to see that these skills you've had can be employed to make a difference? So how does Sean Penn come here today, the Sean Penn I knew and have known well before 6 months ago? How are you different? Or is it just simply another turn in the wheel, and this is who I was always?
I think that intellectually, or whatever, or whatever I aspire to in that area, I always had a sense of these things and tried to apply myself to them, knowing that I was on the fringe.
Yeah.
I think that humanly, it is a very valuable thing to not be on the fringe. And in applying that to appreciating things For example, a lot of volunteers will come back from our place, and a lot of the discussion is, boy, I came back to the States, and all that materialism, it was so disgusting to me. And it was so, I had 49 years of that, man. I'm not going to get suddenly more disgusted than I was because I've seen the other thing. It's just that you can now integrate what you thought you knew, but having it on a daily basis, you just have a more whole sense of what it really smells like, what it really feels like, and what the value of being a have is versus the value of the lack of value of a have-not.
Now, is it the value or the advantage of being a have?
It's by value, I'm putting that word in quotes. We suffer for that value. We suffer for the psychological baggage that we carry around silently, and you don't have to be some kind of, I wanted to rename my organization, the Do-Gooder Bleeding Heart Society, just to sort of shove it up this kind of thing, because it really isn't that. It's that we are all in this one thing, and as long as we are not integrated, as long as we're on the fringe, we might have our money, we will not have a full life. And we'll have more people going to shrinks, we'll have more dysfunctional families, we'll have more kids on drugs, we'll have more guns than anywhere else in the world.
Unless
we suffer from our lack of actual cultural integration. We don't even do it when we claim our diversity in this country. You don't go to any restaurant in the city. Is there black and whites together at tables? Yeah, there's a black with 12 whites once in a while. Nobody's actually taking advantage of the diversity in this country, so why are we celebrating it? We should be actually activating it. And when you go to a place like Haiti, you just can smell humanity more than you can here, where you're smelling the next day's profit.
You've gotten a couple of commendations from the military down there, and this is General Keane, who I think he's like, is he Lieutenant General?
Lieutenant General, 3-star.
And he's a 3-star, and he's down at, is he in Tampa, down there with Central Command?
Doral, at Southcom.
Okay. So he says, as he came, and he's found common purpose with you. And some of the military in here say, look, I don't give a damn about his politics. I separate from his politics, whatever they think your politics are. But here in Haiti, it's not about any of that. No. It's about what we can do today to make a difference.
That's right.
And how we can get rid of whatever stands in the way of doing that.
That's right.
And how fast.
That's right.
And we're not worried about feelings. We're worried about getting the job done.
That's right.
General Keane gave me this look of pride. It meant more to me than any movie award, and you happen to have 2 Oscars. So what do you mean by that? What was it that
Well, I don't know if I said exactly that,
right,
though. I don't want to sell my friend Douglas Brinkley, who's a great writer and historian now. I said something. I will say here, I am proud of the respect that I've been shown by the military, and in particular by Lieutenant General Keane. He's somebody I consider a friend, and in particular, he's somebody I saw the way that the power of common sense works. Of course, representing the United States military, he had a voice that had to be listened to down there. But really, it was just cutting through so much of this thing I was talking about before, where it's not that people are of ill intent or incompetent so much as everybody wants it to get better. They're looking at the terrible problem. So you'll have agencies, NGOs, people with a cautious idea, and they'll say, well, we did a tarp distribution, and we've distributed X amount of tarps today. And then General Keane will say, and where's the lumber? The lumber? Well, what are you going to... Are you talking about being in a poncho in a rainstorm? Because I've been in a poncho in a rainstorm. Is that what you're going to distribute tarps for everyone to put over themselves when the tropical storm? You actually have to build And he was always just clear-eyed about everything that was actually practical and actually going to make a difference.
What's your future commitment to this? Ongoing commitment to this?
Well,
you're getting ready to make a movie, which you have to do. I mean, you don't have to do, but you're doing. You have commitments. You have commitments to a range of things: commitments to family, commitments to yourself, commitments to what you've established down there. Where's the balance going to take place?
On a family level, my kids work in the organization, so they've been to Haiti several times and worked. I could take what I had to offer firsthand on the ground in the capacity that I've been functioning for the last 6 months, about as far as I could before I needed somebody who could do it better. I'll, consistently go back and be part of that, not while I'm in the middle of shooting a movie or so on. But the main thing is that we work a little backwards. We don't go first to the UN agencies. We start with the government of Haiti and the people in the community and try to get a sense of what the people want from their government. And once we then go to the government and we express those needs, we find ourselves often on the same page. We then know that when we go to the NGOs or the UN or organizations, that that nobody's going to say to us, look, the government won't let us do that. And I can say, I was just with the president, he will. And so on. So we try to work backwards that way.
That's what we're talking about.
So in doing that, and then of course you root out the egos from the activists, from the humanitarians, and there are some really good people in all those organizations. We work with them.
Well, and having an ego is not a bad thing always. I mean, ego may be to make a difference.
Yeah, of course.
But that's not the kind of ego you're talking about.
No, I'm talking about NGOs that would prefer to either be there and do it first or not have it done at all. And that's rampant.
Either get the credit for it.
That's right.
Or not do it at all.
And even sabotage it. Yeah, we've faced a lot of that. I mean, I'll write a movie about all this one day, and it won't be a drama, but the comedy will be a tragic comedy.
It's like a catch-22.
Yeah, but so now my camp runner has the same network that I have. Everyone knows everybody. They can do that stuff. I have a great team, and we've got the bulldozers in the streets, thanks to a great benefactor, a guy named Richard Holtz, who came in and financed the initial phase of that project.
Yeah, I mean, you really have brought together some really remarkable people who were there and responded across the board.
Yeah,
people who were part of your own initial.
Yeah, we have, and then we ran into people. Bill Evans, one of the guys who runs the old club that we're on, has been incredibly supportive. So
okay, a couple of quotes you said. There is no exit for me until there is more life than death.
Right.
Did you say that?
Yeah, I think I said that at some point. I never like hearing my own words back.
But you're going to get them. So there's more life than death.
Yeah.
There's no exit for me until there's more life than death.
Yeah, a very prominent Haitian said to me that when the apocalypse comes, the survivors will be cockroaches, rats, and Haitians. So there is this, that Haitians will survive. Not that baby over there, and not that one over there, but there is this popular notion, and it's largely based on incredible resilience that these people have. But I think that with all the decades of failed aid in Haiti, that the one thing that the earthquake has done is even the elite in Haiti have had a come to Jesus moment. Their small pond is devastated. Doesn't mean that their money is, but let's not forget, the wealthy class in Haiti is maybe, relatively speaking, we're talking about, there might be a 55 millionaire, but you don't have a Warren Buffett of Haiti. There is a potential right now to capitalize on a unified spirit like has never been there before. It's part of the reason that there hasn't been so much social unrest and violence. And yet, if we don't make the move now, I think that there will be more death than life in Haiti, and whether it's by disease or social unrest or whatever it is. So I think that there's got to be an incredible momentum created now, and I think it's possible.
A perfect note to end on. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Sean Penn for the hour as we think about Haiti 6 months after the earthquake. If you want to know more about his NGO, it's jphro.org. That's jphro.org. Thank you for joining us. Tomorrow night, Picasso at the Metropolitan Museum. See you then.